And we left at 6 o'clock, and we went to Jabat, and we walked in Jabat to Tirkadamba. And then we came home, and I had Balaram Baba cook an Ekadashi feast. So we took an Ekadashi feast on Ram Navami for Lord Ram's birthday and for Shivaram Swami's birthday. Ram and Shivaram. And then that night we had kirtan over here. Oh, yeah, and the kirtan that night, we had a downpour about 5 o'clock. And then it cleared off and everything looked wonderful. And we didn't know whether we should set up or not. So we took Sagar's opinion, and Sagar said, it's not going to rain anymore. Set up for kirtan. So we set everything up for kirtan and everybody came. And then sort of like 10 minutes after the kirtan began, the downpour, or the rain started. And I'd already told everybody, if it starts to rain, immediately get up and grab something and put it away. And then I invited Sachi, who was leading the kirtan, Shivaram Maharaj, and all the other devotees who weren't putting things away. I said, just come into my room. So my room got so packed up, and the back porch was totally packed. And my computer room here was totally packed, and I couldn't get in. So I was just sitting over in the other room listening to the kirtan going on. And the night before, we did a kirtan in Delhi for the celebration of the 25th anniversary of the temple opening. And they had a kirtan mela. They had 4 or 5 different devotees leading kirtan, and they had our team last to lead kirtan. And it was really big. It was like they had up behind the temple, they had a big pandal set up, and it had been raining there also. So it was like, it's been raining over here. And we got up to the pandal, and up on the stage, they had some abhishek or puja or something like that going on for the little Utsav deities. And they had this huge screen behind that was flashing all of these completely psychedelic lights. You know, it was so crazy. I was joking with the kirtan team. I was saying we should have taken bong before we came over here, and we would be watching those lights and going crazy. But the devotees were so enthusiastic, and we had devotees just packed in up on the stage and devotees out in the audience. It was quite terrific. It was really wonderful. I didn't see Gopal Krishna Maharaj because he's not feeling well these days. But Gopal Krishna Maharaj has really done miracles in preaching Krishna consciousness. And now they have, that temple was opened 25 years ago. And I was there for the opening. During the opening, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, he came. And in the past 25 years, since the temple opened there, His Holiness Gopal Krishna Maharaj is opened, 17 or 18 big temples in Delhi. So just about every year and a half, there's another major temple in New Delhi. I mean, it's something phenomenal. He's such a empowered preacher for Lord Chaitanya. Something so inspirational. But it was a huge team. You know, a number of devotees were there, and the reception was very wonderful. Yes, so we've been having kirtans over here in the evening when we haven't been getting rained out. And we had nice kirtan last night, though it wasn't so heavily attended. I didn't really advertise, and I didn't advertise again today because I forgot. But very nice kirtan yesterday evening. And because of the rain, this season that we're having in Vrindavan is not like normal season. You know, now it's generally already like hot, but we're hardly running fans over here. You know, and the nights are cool. So it's Krishna's real mercy is upon us. Last year, we had 1 week of spring and then temperatures shot up to 40 and that was it. And this year we've had like a very long, beautiful spring. So it's very, very nice. Okay, I hope that all of you all have been well. And today I will read from Chaitanya Charitamrita. And I will now somebody's going to have to do something to the screens. Okay, let me just see. So I just did it so I could see the screen. We're going to be reading from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Antya Lila, chapter 8. And this chapter is going to describe Ramachandra Puri. And perhaps you all have heard in classes, or if you've read Chaitanya Charitamrita, you read about Ramachandra Puri. He was a disciple of Madhavendra Puri. But he had some bad association and he became an offender. So we will read about his activities and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's response to that. So I will begin because we only have about 45 minutes before Kirtan is supposed to start over here. Chaitanya Charitamrita Antya Lila 8.1. Let me offer my respectful obeisances to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who reduced his eating due to fear of the criticism of Ramachandra Puri. I should say before we begin, let's offer obeisances to Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Vicharane Nirvishesha Shunyata Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Advaita Gadadhar Shivasti Gaur Bhakti Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Rama Hare Hare. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who reduced his eating due to fear of the criticism of Ramachandra Puri. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Karuna Sindhu Avatar Brahma Shivadika Bhaje Charana Yanhara. All glories to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the incarnation of the ocean of mercy. His lotus feet are worshipped by the demigods, like Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva. I'm going to get up for just a second and close the windows in my room because they're setting up for kirtan outside and it's a little noisy for me. So just give me a minute. Let's throw you out there. Hey, Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the incarnation of the ocean of mercy. His lotus feet are worshipped by demigods like Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva. All glories to Nityananda Prabhu, the greatest of mendicants, who bound the entire world with a knot of ecstatic love for God. Those are nice descriptions. In the last verse, Kaviraj Goswami said that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the incarnation of the ocean of mercy. And here it says that Nitai is the greatest of all mendicants, and he bound the entire world with a knot of ecstatic love for Krishna. Hey, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we've repeated so many times from the Mangalacharanam that verse where it says that he came to give what no one ever gave before, which is the mellow taste of his love. And then he charged Nitai to go to Bengal and to preach. And so he went and he just tied the entire world up with a knot of ecstatic love. Jaya Jaya Advaita Ishwara Avatara Krishna Avatari Koila Jagat Nishtara. All glories to Advaita Prabhu, the incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He induced Krishna to descend and thus delivered the entire world. So again, Advaita is the incarnation of, joint incarnation of Sadashiva and Mahavishnu. And as Sadashiva, he was living, Shiva living on his planet in the spiritual world in Vaikuntha, and feeling too much lamentation for the distress that the people of Kali would be undertaking. So he sat in tapasya for the benefit of us fallen souls in Kali. And after performance of his tapasya, then the Lord came, Mahavishnu came and embraced him. And so then that combined form became Harihara. And that form of Harihara incarnated as Advaita. And then Advaita impelled the Lord to come and save the people in this world. All glories to all the devotees headed by Srivas Thakur. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is their life and soul. Thus, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at Jagannath Puri performed his various pastimes with his devotees in the waves of love for Krishna. E Mata, in this way, Gaurachandra Nija Bhakta Sange, with his own devotees. Nilachali Krida Kare Krishna Prema Tarange. In the waves of love for Krishna, he executed pastimes with his devotees. Then a sannyasi named Ramachandra Puri Goswami came to see Paramananda Puri and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Paramananda Puri offered respects at the feet of Ramachandra Puri, and Ramachandra Puri strongly embraced him. Because Ramachandra Puri was a disciple of Madhavendra Puri, both Paramananda Puri and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu offered him respectful obeisances. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur comments that although Ramachandra Puri was naturally very envious And although he was against the principles of Vaishnavism, or in other words, against the principles of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his devotees, common people nevertheless addressed him as Goswami or Gosani because he was superficially in the renounced order and he was dressed like a sannyasi. In the modern age, the title of Goswami, is used by a caste of grihastas, but formerly it was not. Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami, for example, were called Goswami because they were in the renounced order. Similarly, because Paramananda Puri was a sannyasi, he was called Puri Goswami. By careful scrutiny, therefore, one will find that Goswami is not a title for a certain caste. Rather, it is properly the title for a person who is in the renounced order. And Srila Prabhupada always told us that Goswami, it means a person who is the master of the senses. And Prabhupada charged all of us, regardless of what our ashram may be, that we're meant to become the master of our senses. Two situations. One situation is to be the servant of the senses, and the other is to be the master of the senses. And being the servant of the senses only creates unlimited tribulation for the living being. Whereas if one keeps the senses tightly controlled and keeps the mind tightly controlled, then one can focus on devotional service and attain the lotus feet of Krishna. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also offered obeisances unto Ramachandra Puri, who then embraced him and thus remembered Krishna. So again, Ramachandra Puri is the Ramachandra Puri. He was one of the disciples of Madhavinda Puri, which means that he was a godbrother of Ishwar Puri, and therefore he was senior to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Okay, and although he was showing himself to be a Vaishnava and a Goswami, he was a Mayavadi. And nevertheless, when he embraced Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he remembered Krishna. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu offered obeisances to Ramachandra Puri in consideration of his being a disciple of Srila Madhavendra Puri, the spiritual master of his own spiritual master, Ishwar Puri. When a Vaishnava sannyasi meets another Vaishnava sannyasi, they both remember Krishna. Even Mayavadi sannyasis generally remember Narayan, who is also Krishna, by saying Om Namo Bhagavate Narayanaya or Namo Narayanaya. Thus, it is the duty of a sannyasi to remember Krishna. According to Smriti Shastra, a sannyasi does not offer obeisances or blessings to anyone. It is said, sannyasi nidashir nirnamaskriya. The sannyasi should not offer anyone blessings or obeisances. And somewhere here in Antya Lila, Srila Prabhupada speaks about this principle of about offering blessings. I can't remember clearly what I was going to say now, so I just won't say it. The three of them talked about Krishna for some time, and then Jagadananda came and extended an invitation to Ramachandra Puri. A large quantity of the remnants of food from Lord Jagannath was brought in for distribution, Ramachandra Puri ate sumptuously, and then he wanted to find fault in Jagadananda Pandit. After finishing the meal, Ramachandra Puri requested, "My dear Jagadananda, please listen. You eat the food that is left." With great eagerness, Ramachandra Puri seated Jagadananda Pandit and personally served him prasadam. Encouraging him again and again, Ramachandra Puri fed him sumptuously. But when Jagadananda had washed his hands and mouth, Ramachandra Puri began to criticize him. "I have heard," he said, "that the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu eat more than necessary. Now I have directly seen that this is true." That's very devious, isn't it? He wanted to give Jagadananda more and more prasadam, and Jagadananda honored his request, and then he criticized him for eating too much. Feeding a sannyasi too much breaks his regulative principles. For when a sannyasi eats too much, his renunciation is destroyed. Give me 1 second. The characteristic of Ramachandra Puri was that he would first induce someone to eat more than necessary, and then he would criticize the same person. Formally, so now we're going to get a little history. Formerly, when Madhavendra Puri was at the last stage of his life, Ramachandra Puri came to see where he was staying. Madhavendra Puri was chanting the holy names of Krishna, and sometimes he would cry, "Oh my Lord, I did not get shelter at Mathura." So he's on his deathbed, being a Vaishnava. He's chanting and he's crying and he's saying, "Oh my Lord, I didn't attain your shelter. Lord, I didn't attain your shelter." Then Ramachandra Puri was so foolish that he fearlessly dared to instruct his spiritual master. So that's a very interesting point. You know, Madhavendra Puri is on his deathbed crying in separation and weeping in the mood of a Vaishnava. He's chanting Harinam and he said, "I didn't attain you, I didn't attain you." And he says, then Ramachandra Puri was so foolish that he fearlessly dared to instruct his spiritual master. That's not a good position to be in. Starting to instruct the spiritual master. Sometimes, the spiritual masters may request some guidance or some perspective on some managerial situation. But here, Ramachandra Puri is going to, dare to instruct his spiritual master in a very bad way. You have to give me 1 second because the monkeys who are humans are playing too much in my front yard, so I have to tell them to stop because it's a distraction.
उसका ब्लैक पे लगेगा या फिर ग्रे?
I'm trying to give class in here. When people are doing calisthenics and flattening and picking Vrindavan and other things, it's a distraction for me. So everybody can do a lot of people. I'm sure that you've all heard that Srila Prabhupada said the best position for us all is to always remain a fool in front of our spiritual masters. So this is what Ramachandra Puri is going to tell his spiritual master, who's crying and weeping due to separation. If you are in full transcendental bliss, you should now remember only Brahman. Why are you crying? Very horrible thing to say. Oh, Guru Maharaj, if you're really on the transcendental platform, why are you crying? Just fix your mind and remembering the impersonal Brahman. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma, a Brahman realized person is always happy. Na sochati, na kankshati. He neither laments nor aspires for anything. Not knowing why Madhavendra Puri was crying, Ramachandra Puri tried to become his advisor. Thus, he committed a great offense, for a disciple should never try to instruct his spiritual master. That's a dangerous situation. Hearing this instruction, Madhavendra Puri, greatly angry, rebuked him by saying, "Get out, you sinful rascal." Ramachandra Puri could not understand that his spiritual master, Madhavendra Puri, was feeling transcendental separation. His lamentation was not material, rather it proceeded from the highest stage of ecstatic love of Krishna. When he was crying in separation, I could not achieve Krishna. I could not reach Mathura. This was not ordinary material lamentation. Ramachandra Puri was not sufficiently expert to understand the feelings of Madhavendra Puri, but nevertheless, he thought himself very advanced. Therefore, regarding Madhavendra Puri's expressions as ordinary material lamentation, he advised him to remember Brahman because he was latently an impersonalist. Madhavendra Puri understood Ramachandra Puri's position as a great fool, and therefore he immediately rebuked him. Such a reprimand from the spiritual master is certainly meant for the betterment of the disciple. Tamal Krishna Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, he told the story about how he was one time listening to his spiritual master speak, and he was sitting next to a very old man, and the old man couldn't understand something that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had said, so he turned to Srila Prabhupada and he said, "What did he say?" And then Prabhupada turned to the old man and he told him, what he had said. And just at that moment, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta looked up and he saw Prabhupada speaking while he was lecturing. And he chastised Srila Prabhupada. And he said, "You have become so big now that you can talk when your spiritual master is speaking." And Srila Prabhupada, he said he relished that. He always kept that chastisement close to his heart. And he felt like he was fully accepted by his spiritual master. And one time, just on that little lane that you walk from the temple over to this house, the house on the corner there on that lane, that was Tamal Krishna Goswami's house. And one winter morning, I was there with him, and I asked him, I said, what are your fondest remembrances of being with Srila Prabhupada since you were with him so much? And he said, my most fond remembrances are when Prabhupada chastised me. And one chastisement that he told me about, perhaps I've mentioned this to you all before, but is regarding the Juhu property. And they were someplace in South India, and Prabhupada got a phone call that the deal at Juhu had been concluded. And so he told Tamal Krishna Maharaj, go to Bombay immediately and secure the papers for the property. And by the time Tamal Krishna Maharaj reached Bombay, the previous owner of the property, Mr. Nair, he had bribed ISKCON's advocate. And when Tamal Krishna Maharaj came for the papers, ISKCON's advocate told Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he said, this deal is very, very bad. You should cancel this contract immediately. And I guess this is after Mr. Nair had taken some sufficient amount of money. He said, you should cancel this contract immediately. You know, and because Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he had faith in who he thought was an honest advocate, he canceled the contract. And then later, Srila Prabhupada, he phoned and he said, so you've got the papers? And he said, no, Prabhupada, I canceled the deal. And when Prabhupada heard that, Tamal Krishna Maharaj said, Prabhupada, just on the other end of the phone, he said there was silence. And then Prabhupada said, you did not cancel the deal. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj said, no, Prabhupada, I canceled the deal. Prabhupada said, you did not cancel the deal. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj said, no, Srila Prabhupada, I canceled the deal. And so then Prabhupada just hung up the phone on Tamal Krishna Maharaj, and he came to Bombay immediately, and Prabhupada learned the whole story. And at that time, Prabhupada was giving darshan to all of the nice aristocratic gentlemen of Bombay every afternoon. And Tamal told me that he would be sitting in darshan with Prabhupada with all these nice, old generation Bombay wealthy Indians. And he said for 2 or 3 days, Prabhupada would introduce Tamal Krishna Maharaj. He said, this is Tamal Krishna Maharaj. He is my servant. He thinks that he's a very intelligent man, but actually he is just a great fool. And Tamal said that it stung when Prabhupada was saying it, but he just relished being chastised, and he held it so closely to his heart. So here we have Madhavendra Puri chastising Ramachandra, and he's saying, get out, you sinful rascal, which must be kind of a very terrible thing. Your spiritual master is laying on his deathbed, and you say something to him, and he looks up and sees you, and he says, get out of here, I don't want to see your face. In text number 23, he says, oh my Lord Krishna, I could not reach you, nor could I reach your abode, Mathura. I am dying in my unhappiness, and now this rascal has come to give me more pain. It's like, just making the situation more terrible. Now this rascal has come to give me more pain. And then, on his deathbed, he looks at his disciple and he says, don't show your face to me. Go anywhere else you like, If I die seeing your face, I shall not achieve the destination of my life. What a powerful statement he made. Don't show your face to me. Go any place else, any place at all. But if I die seeing your face, I will never achieve the destination of my life. I am dying without achieving the shelter of Krishna, and therefore I am greatly unhappy. Now, this condemned, foolish rascal has come here to instruct me about Brahman. Ramachandra Puri was thus denounced by Madhavendra Puri. Due to his offense, gradually material desire appeared within him. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The word vasana, material desires, refers to dry speculative knowledge. Such speculative knowledge is only material. As confirmed in the Srimad Bhagavatam, a person without devotional service who simply wants to know things gains only dry speculative knowledge but no spiritual benefit. And this is confirmed in the Bhakti Sandarbha. Even though one is liberated in this life, if one offends the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he falls down in the midst of material desires, of which dry speculation without spiritual realization is one. And in his Laghu Toshani commentary on the Srimad Bhagavatam, Diva Goswami says, even if a person is liberated in this life, he becomes addicted to material desires because of offenses to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A similar quotation from one of the Puranas also appears in the Vishnu Bhakti Chandrodaya. Even liberated souls sometimes fall down to material desires, but those who fully engage in devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead are not affected by such desires. These are references from authoritative scriptures. If one becomes an offender to his spiritual master or to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he falls down to the material platform to merely speculate. So, my dear devotees, we should be very careful about this business of aparad, Vaishnava aparad, Guru aparad, offending the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because if we do that, we will fall down from our spiritual position and we'll simply become dry speculators. One who is attached to dry speculative knowledge has no relationship with Krishna. His occupation is criticizing Vaishnavas. Thus, he is situated in criticism. Let's not be like this. Let us try to advance in Krishna consciousness. We've heard so many times there's the Kanishta position of devotional service, is the Madhyam position of devotional service, and the Uttama position of bhakti. And we should try our best to rise up to being Madhyam Adhikaris, but not remain in the Kanishta position. And if we look at ISKCON, I mean, ISKCON is such a huge society all over the world. And with the grace of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and with the grace of Srila Prabhupada, there are undoubtedly many highly advanced Vaishnavas who are members of this society. But it's such a vast society and so many new people coming all the time. There are many Kanishtas also. And I often see that with this Kanishta mentality, there's this tendency to criticize others. Regardless of what a person may be doing, a person may be well, I won't go into details. A person can see oneself as a very nice creature, but if he has this Kanishta mentality, he'll simply be criticizing others. So we should be very careful that we don't want to remain in the Kanishta position. We want to rise up and become true devotees of the Lord. One who is attached to dry, speculative knowledge has no relationship with Krishna. His occupation is criticizing Vaishnavas, thus he is situated in criticism. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has explained in his Anubhashya that the word nirbandha indicates that Ramachandra Puri had a steady desire to criticize others. How horrible. Impersonalist Mayavadis who have no relationship with Krishna, who cannot take to devotional service, and who simply engage in material arguments to understand Brahman, regard devotional service to Krishna as karma kanda, or fruitive activities. According to them, devotional service to Krishna is but another means for attaining dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. Therefore, they criticize the devotees for engaging in material activities. They think that devotional service is maya, and that Krishna and Vishnu is also maya. Therefore, they are called Mayavadis. Such a mentality awakens in a person who is an offender to Krishna and his devotees. The other night when I was in Delhi, I saw a person, one devotee, nice devotee, that I worked with when I was organizing ISKCON's camp in the Mahakumbha Mela back in 1989. And we were recalling how when we went to Allahabad, or Prayag now, when we went to Prayag, we were visiting one very wealthy man trying to get a donation for our camp in the Kumbh Mela. And we spoke to him for about an hour, and after about an hour, I think he gave 50 rupees. You know, he wasn't a very charitable fellow. And then he said, you know, Swamiji, I have my own temple, and at the present moment, I have one Swami here who is giving a Bhagavad Gita. Would you like to meet the Swami? And I asked, what is Swami's name? And he gave me some very long names, some Saraswati, Tirtha, Ananda, you know, all of these different, you know, sort of Mayavadi, Advaita Vedantic buzzwords. And I told him, no, really, I don't want to meet your Swami. But the Indian devotee that I was with, he kept pressing, no, Maharaj, we should go and meet the Swami. And so we went, and I walked in, and the man was, you know, he had like orange robes and completely bald head. And he was sitting there and he was looking very grumpy. And then, because we're supposed to give pranams to any sannyasi, I offered obeisances. And then I was trying to speak to him some. And finally, I looked at him and I said, Maharaj, from the Bhagavatam, what are you speaking on? And he said, I'm speaking on the 5 chapters of the Ras Leela. And immediately that started setting off the red alarms in my consciousness. And he was sitting down on a asana on the floor, and he had a choki in front of him, and he had a big Bhagavatam sitting in front of him. And I continued, I said, Maharaj, how many hours a day do you study the Srimad Bhagavatam? And he put his hand on the Bhagavatam, and he said, actually, there is nothing in this book. And when he said that, I sort of exploded. And I said, sir, you are a great rascal to say that there's nothing in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And if there's nothing in the Bhagavatam, how dare you speak on the Srimad Bhagavatam? Your business is that you should just keep your mouth closed, because if you speak, only nonsense will come out. And the Indian devotee that I was with, he was starting to get very agitated, and he was saying, don't speak that way. Don't speak that way. Perhaps the host will become offended. And I looked at the Swami, I said, you have no adhikari for speaking on the topics of Krishna and the damsels of Vrindavan. And he was saying, no, you do not understand. I believe in Krishna. And so I looked at him and I said, you believe in Krishna? I said, so tell me, when Krishna comes to this world, Mother Jasoda and the gopis and all of their associates, do they accept bodies made out of the material mode of goodness? And when I said that, he looked at me and said, yes, certainly. And when he said that, I screamed at him and I said, you are a damn rascal. You should not speak at all. You have no understanding of Krishna. And he said, no, you see, I have a picture of Krishna. Every day I offer 2 ladus to Krishna's picture. Here, take the prasad. And I told the Indian devotee I was with, I don't want to take this prasad. He said, no, take it so they won't be offended. And then we took the prasad and we left, and then we put it in the gutter. But here it says, they think that devotional service to Krishna is Maya. And they think that Krishna and Vishnu is also Maya. They think that when they come here, they're Brahman, but when they come here, they accept bodies made out of, the finest quality of material nature, the material mode of goodness. But because they think that way, they're called Maya bodies. And Prabhupada says that this mentality arises in people who are offenders to Krishna and his devotees. Ishwar Puri, the spiritual master Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, performed service to Madhavinda Puri, cleansing up his stool and urine with his own hand. So, when Madhavinda Puri was quite infirm, Ishwar Puri used to stay and take care of him and not question anything, clean the stool, clean the urine. Ishwar Puri was always chanting the holy name and pastimes of Lord Krishna for Madhavinda Puri to hear. And this way, he helped Madhavinda Puri remember the holy name and pastimes of Lord Krishna at the time of death. Pleased with Ishwar Puri, Madhavendra Puri embraced him and gave him the benediction that he would become a great devotee and a lover of Krishna. So that's the blessing of pleasing one's spiritual master. You receive a benediction, become a great devotee, and become Krishna's lover. Thus, Ishwar Puri became like an ocean of ecstatic love for Krishna, whereas Ramachandra Puri became a dry speculator and a critic of everybody that he came in contact with. Yeah, We keep telling you, we keep asking you, please do not commit Vaishnava aparadh. Please do not commit Vaishnava aparadh. And some folks, they just carry on committing Vaishnava aparadh. But here it says, because Ishwar Puri served his spiritual master with so much love, he was like an ocean of ecstatic love himself for Krishna. But Ramachandra Puri, he became like a dry speculator, and he just became a critic of everyone. He just couldn't stop criticizing Vaishnavas. Ishwar Puri received the blessings of Madhavendra Puri, whereas Ramachandra Puri received a rebuke from him. Therefore, these two persons, Ishwar Puri and Ramachandra Puri, are examples of the objects of a great personality's benediction and punishment. Madhavendra Puri instructed the entire world by presenting these two examples. That's very nice. Madhavendra Puri instructed the whole world. Now see the difference of what you will get. If you serve with faith and love and devotion, you will become like an ocean of love for Krishna. If you criticize the Vaishnavas, then you'll just become dried up like a dry branch, and you will fall off the tree. His Divine Grace Madhavendra Puri, the spiritual master of the entire world, thus distributed ecstatic love for Krishna. While passing away from the material world, he chanted the following verse. Ai dina dayadranatha he matudanath kadava lokshase vidayam twad aloka kataram dayate vramyati kim karumyaham. O my Lord, O most merciful Master, O Master of Mathura, when shall I see you again? Because of my not seeing you, my agitated heart has become unsteady. O most beloved one, what shall I do now? This Kim Karom Yaham, what shall I do now? Kim Karom Yaham. O my Lord, O most merciful Master, O Master of Mathura, when shall I see you again? Because of my not seeing you, my agitated heart has become unsteady. O most beloved one, what shall I do now? Yeah, because of not seeing you, my agitated heart has become unsteady. When will we feel that way so deeply? Because of not seeing Krishna, our hearts become agitated. And this verse, Madhavendra Puri, teaches how to achieve ecstatic love for Krishna. By feeling separation from Krishna, one becomes spiritually situated. That's very, very nice. We have to experience this feeling of vipralambha, or separation from Krishna. And just like the young girls of Braja, when Krishna disappeared, when they were having their dancing pastimes, they felt so much separation that they became like mad people. They became so devastated. They became so humble in that feeling of separation. And then Krishna, seeing that, he came back and gave himself to them. So by feeling separation from Krishna, one becomes spiritually situated. Madhavendra Puri sowed the seed of ecstatic love for Krishna within this material world, and then he departed. That seed later became a great tree in the form of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I have incidentally described the passing away of Madhavendra Puri. Anyone who hears this must be considered very fortunate. So we are all fortunate today because we have heard this pastime from Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. Thus, Ramachandra Puri stayed at Jagannath Puri, as is customary for those in the renounced order. He would sometimes stay someplace and then go away. There was no certainty of where Ramachandra Puri would take his meal, for he would do so even if he was uninvited. Nevertheless, he was very particular about keeping account of how others were taking their meals. He sounded like a very complicated person. You know, no one knew. I guess he wasn't getting invitations, and he would just turn up uninvited to eat, and he would eat heartily, but he would keep his eye on what the other Vaishnavas were eating. To invite Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would cost about 320 kodis, or small conch shells. This would provide lunch for 3 people, including Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, sometimes Kashishwar, and Govinda. Every day the Lord would take his meal at a different place, and if someone was prepared to pay for a meal, the price was fixed at only 4 panas. Ramachandra Puri concerned himself with gathering all sorts of information about how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was situated, including his regulative principles, his lunch, his sleep, and his movement. Sounds like a very bad-hearted person. Because Ramachandra Puri was interested only in finding faults, he could not understand the transcendental qualities of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. His only concern was finding faults, but still he could not find any. So he was like, you know, really had hope that he was going to catch Lord Chaitanya out on something, but he couldn't find any faults in the Lord. At last, he found a fault. How can a person in the renounced order eat so many sweetmeats, he said. If one eats sweets, controlling the senses is very difficult. In this way, Ramachandra Puri blasphemed Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu before everyone, but nevertheless, he would regularly come to see the Lord every day. Sounds very evil, doesn't he? He used to just everywhere, he would always criticize Lord Chaitanya, always eating too many sweets. He's a sannyasi, he's eating too many sweets. And nonetheless, he would come and he would visit Chaitanya Mahaprabhu every day. When they met, the Lord would offer him respectful obeisances, considering him a godbrother of his spiritual master. Ramachandra Puri's business, however, was to search for faults in the Lord. See how nice the Lord is. The Lord is in everybody's heart. The Lord knows everybody's intention. The Lord knows what Ramachandra Puri was up to. But still, when Ramachandra Puri would come, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would offer his obeisances to him. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu knew that Ramachandra Puri was criticizing him before everyone. But whenever Ramachandra Puri came to see him, the Lord offered him respects with great attention. One day, Ramachandra Puri came in the morning to the abode of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Seeing many ants, he said something to criticize the Lord. Last night there was sugar candy here. Therefore, ants are wandering about. Alas, this renounced sannyasi is attached to such sense gratification. After speaking in this way, he got up and he left. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had heard rumors about Ramachandra Puri's blaspheming. Now he directly heard his fanciful accusations. Ants generally crawl here and there and everywhere. But Ramachandra Puri, imagining faults, criticized Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by alleging that there had been sweetmeats in his room. Evil-minded person. Evil-minded, he was latently, he was a impersonalist. He dared to try to instruct his spiritual master. He was rebuked by his spiritual master. And then his business just became criticizing everyone. And so now he's criticizing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu directly. After hearing this criticism, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was doubtful and apprehensive. Therefore, he called Govinda and instructed him as follows. From today on, it will be a rule that I shall accept 1/4 of a pot of Lord Jagannath's prasadam and 5 gandas worth of vegetable. If you bring any more than this, you will not see me here anymore. So Lord Chaitanya is cutting his eating, I think, in half. Govinda relayed this message to all the devotees. When they heard it, they felt as if their heads had been struck by thunderbolts. All the devotees condemned Ramachandra Puri, saying, "This sinful man has come here and he has taken our lives." That day, a Brahmin extended an invitation to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When Govinda accepted only 5 gandas worth of vegetable and 1/4 of a pot of rice, the Brahmin, in great despair, struck his head with his hand, and he cried, "Alas, alas." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ate only half of the rice and vegetables, and whatever remained was taken by Govinda. Thus, both Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Govinda ate only half the food they needed. Because of this, all of the other devotees decided to give up eating. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ordered Kashishwar and Govinda, "You may both take alms elsewhere in order to fill up your bellies." In this way, some days passed in great unhappiness. Hearing of all this, Ramachandra Puri went to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu offered his obeisances to Ramachandra Puri and worshipped his feet. Then Ramachandra Puri smiled and he spoke to the Lord. Ramachandra Puri advised, "It is not the business of a sannyasi to gratify his senses. He should fill his belly some way or another." "I have heard that you've cut your eating in half. Indeed, I see that you are skinny. Such dry renunciation is also not the religion of a sannyasi." So this person you can't win with. Either he's criticizing you for eating, or if you're not eating, he's criticizing you for dry renunciation. A sannyasi eats as much as necessary to maintain his body, but he does not enjoy satisfying his senses materially. Thus, the sannyasi becomes perfect in his spiritual advancement and knowledge. Give me just a second. I'm having a little issue over here. Lord Krishna says, "My dear Arjun, one cannot perform mystic yoga if he eats more than necessary or needlessly fasts, sleeps and dreams too much, or does not sleep enough. One should eat and enjoy his senses as much as necessary. One should properly endeavor to execute his duties, and one should regulate his sleep and his wakefulness. Thus one can become freed from material pains by executing mystic yoga." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then humbly submitted, "I am just like an ignorant boy, and I am like your disciple. It is my great fortune that you are instructing me." Hearing this, Ramachandra Puri got up and left. He also heard from various sources that all the devotees of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu were eating half as much as usual. The next day, Paramananda Puri and other devotees approached Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with great humility and submission. Paramananda Puri said, "My godbrother Ramachandra Puri is by nature a bad critic. If you give up eating because of his words, what will be the profit?" It is the nature of Ramachandra Puri that he first lets one eat as much as desired, and if one does not eat more than necessary, with great attention, he makes him eat more. In this way, he induces one to eat more than necessary, and then he directly criticizes him, saying, "You eat so much. How much money do you have in your treasury?" There's no limit to the criticism of Ramachandra Puri. Also, by inducing sannyasis to eat so much, you spoil their religious principles. Therefore, I can understand that you have no advancement. Very bad person. Paramananda Puri says, "It is Ramachandra's Puri's business to inquire always about how others are eating and conducting their daily affairs." Let's not be like that, my dear devotees. Let's not be concerned about what the other Vaishnavas are eating and how they're conducting their daily affairs. Let's give great attention to our own Krishna consciousness and our own improvement in bhakti, but never fall into the state of criticizing Vaishnavas or spiritual masters, the Lord himself. The two kinds of activities rejected in the revealed scriptures constitute his daily activities. This is still Paramananda Puri speaking. Two kinds of activities rejected in the revealed scriptures constitute his daily affairs. One should see that because of the meeting of material nature and the living entity, the universe is acting uniformly. Thus, one should neither praise nor criticize the activities of others. So this is from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Everything is going on by the arrangement of nature. Therefore, one should not criticize or one should not praise. Of the two rules, Ramachandra Puri obeys the first by abandoning praise. But although he knows that the second is more prominent, he neglects it by criticizing others. We should never neglect to glorify the devotees of the Lord. We should never use the tongue for criticizing the Vaishnavas. Between the former rule and the latter rule, the latter is more important. So this is from logic. Glorify Vaishnavas. Even where there are hundreds of good qualities, a critic does not consider them. Rather, he attempts by some trick to point out a fault amongst all of those attributes. My goodness. Even when there are hundreds of good qualities, a critic does not consider them. Rather, he attempts by some trick to point out a fault in all those hundreds of good qualities. One should not, therefore, follow the principle of Ramachandra Puri. Nevertheless, I have to say something against him because he is making our hearts unhappy. Why have you given up proper eating due to the criticism of Ramachandra Puri? Please accept invitations as before. This is the request of all of us. So this is the appeal being made by Paramananda Puri to Lord Chaitanya. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, "Why are all of you angry at Ramachandra Puri? He is expounding the natural principles of sannyas life. Why are you accusing him? For a sannyasi to indulge in satisfying the tongue is a great offense. The duty of a sannyasi is to eat only as much as needed to keep the body and the soul together. When they all requested very fervently that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu take a full meal, he still would not do so. Instead, he responded to their request by accepting half as much as usual. So now he's like cutting, he's already cut, now he's cutting more. The cost of the food needed to invite Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was fixed at 2 panna of kodis, 160 conch shells. And that food would be taken by 2 men and sometimes 3. When a Brahmin at whose home an invitation could not be accepted invited the Lord, he would pay 2 pannas of conch shells to purchase the prasadam. When a Brahmin at whose home an invitation could be accepted invited him, the Brahmin would purchase part of the prasadam and cook the rest at home. So different ways Brahmins had to serve Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Even on a day when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was invited to dine by others, if Gadadhar Pandit, Bhagavan Acharya, or Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya invited him, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had no independence. He would accept their invitations as they desired. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu actually descended to give happiness to devotees. Thus he behaved in whatever way that fit the time and circumstances. Because of his full independence, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sometimes behaved like a common man, and sometimes he manifested his godly opulence. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sometimes accepted Ramachandra Puri as his spiritual master and considered himself a servant, and sometimes the Lord, not caring for him, would see him just as being like straw. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu behaved exactly like the Supreme Personality of Godhead, beyond the restriction of anyone's intelligence. He did whatever he liked, but all of his activities were very beautiful. Thus, Ramachandra Puri stayed for some days at Nilachala, Jagannath Puri. Then he left to visit various holy places of pilgrimage. The devotees considered Ramachandra Puri to be like a great burden on their heads. When he left Jagannath Puri, everyone felt extremely happy, as if a great stone burden had suddenly fallen from their heads to the ground. Wow. And a real Vaishnava criticizer. And the devotees just felt like having this person around is just like a heavy weight on our heads. And finally, when he left Jagannath Puri, everybody felt happy. They felt like, oh, that great stone has gone now. After his departure, everyone was happy once again. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted invitations as usual, and he led congregational chanting and dancing. Everyone else also accepted prasadam without hindrances. If a person's spiritual master rejects him, one becomes so fallen that he, like Ramachandra Puri, commits offenses even to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We'll read that again. If one's spiritual master rejects him, one becomes so fallen that he, like Ramachandra Puri, commits offenses even to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not consider the offenses of Ramachandra Puri, for the Lord considered him his spiritual master. However, his character instructed everyone about the results of offending the spiritual master. The character of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is full of nectar. Hearing about it is pleasing to the ear and to the mind. I write about the character of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, O readers. Please hear with attention, for thus you will easily receive ecstatic love for the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. Praying at the lotus feet of Sri Rupa and Raghunath, always desiring their mercy, I, Krishna Das, narrate Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita following in their footsteps. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports to the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Antya Lila, a chapter describing how the Lord reduced his eating in fear of the criticism of Ramachandra Puri. Dear devotees, let's all be very careful. Let's all be very, very careful. The Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not consider the offenses of Ramachandra Puri, for the Lord considered him his spiritual master, because he was the godbrother of Ishwar Puri, and one should see the godbrothers of the spiritual master on the same level as the spiritual master. However, Ramachandra Puri's character instructed everybody about the results of offending the spiritual master. You know, they saw his nature and they could understand it's because he's an offender. Okay. Thank you all very much for coming together today. I should conclude now because a few people are starting to come in outside for kirtan. I pray that everybody stays well, blissful in Krishna consciousness. I had the great fortune of seeing Braja Janananda over here a few days ago. He went with us on Shivaram Swami's birthday, and we went to Javat and Terkadamba. And one of my nice disciples from England, Golokananda, he's jumped down for a week, and he told me that he's going to be jumping over to Dubai also for 2 days on his way back to England in the next few days. So if any of you all see him, please be very kind and help him out in any way you possibly can. All right, so I will ring off now. Thank you all very, very much for being here today. Take these instructions of Chaitanya Charitamrita to heart. Be very careful about this process of offending Vaishnavas, offending Krishna, and especially offending the spiritual master. In the early days here in Vrindavan, one of Srila Prabhupada's Western devotees, he was a Sanskritist, and he was increasing his learning of grammar or nyaya or one of the aspects of Sanskrit education. He was associating with Babajis outside of ISKCON. And these Babajis didn't have a favorable opinion of Srila Prabhupada or Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur or Srila Bhaktivinoda. And this devotee was picking up on that in their association. And so at one point, he approached Srila Prabhupada, and our devotees were telling Prabhupada this was going on, what he was saying, and Prabhupada was very disturbed. And that devotee, he gradually moved away from ISKCON Sangha. And it is said that he wrote Prabhupada a letter, and he said, well, despite the fact that I'm associating with these other acharyas or spiritual masters, I realize that you are a great Bhagavat. So I pray that you will always give me your mercy. And Prabhupada replied, because this Western devotee had become such a smarty pants that he offended Prabhupada's spiritual master. Prabhupada replied, he said, my blessing to you is that in millions of births and deaths, you will never attain any advancement in devotional service. So that's very, very strong. Offending the spiritual master. We should be very, very careful. Vaishnava aparad, Guru aparad, unlimited material desires. Okay, everyone. Hare Krishna. Stay well until next week. I'm going for kirtan. Hare Krishna. Glory to Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, Guru
Hare
Maharaj.
Krishna.
Thank
Jai
you.
Jai Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj.
Guru
Thank you
Maharaj.
so much.
Jai Jai.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj.
Jai Jai Govinda. Down Nitai. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Okay, I have to go. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj.
Hare
Guru Maharaj ki jai.
Bye.
So well, you are the host. You can enter.
Jai. Down Nitai.
Thank you so much for joining. Hare Krishna. See you next week.
I have to go. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hey, Jagannath ji.